are not here to live someone else's life. Let me slow this down because this might be the most important thing you ever hear. From the moment you're born, the world starts handing you a script. It's subtle at first. Be good. Get good grades. Be realistic. Play it safe. And before you even realize it, you're not living your life anymore. You're performing. You're acting out a version of success that was designed by someone else. People who had their own fears, their own limitations, their own unfinished dreams. And you inherit them without even questioning it. I remember being young and looking around, feeling like something didn't fit. Like the life everyone was chasing wasn't the life I wanted. But that feeling is dangerous, because the moment you step outside the script, people get uncomfortable. They'll tell you you're being reckless. They'll tell you you're making a mistake. They'll try to pull you back into the safe zone because your courage reminds them of their own fear. But here's the truth no one tells you. Playing it safe is the riskiest thing you can do, because you can spend your entire life climbing a ladder only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. And by then, it's too late. I didn't have everything figured out. I dropped out of college. I didn't have a clear plan. I didn't know how it would all work out. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to live a life that didn't feel like mine. That decision, that refusal, is where everything begins. Because the moment you stop living for approval, you start living with purpose. And there's a huge difference between those two. Living for approval means you're constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering what people think, adjusting who you are to fit what they expect. It's exhausting. And worse, it slowly erases you. But living with purpose, that's different. That's when you wake up excited, even if things are uncertain. That's when your work feels like an extension of who you are, not just something you do. That's when you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what do I believe in? Most people never make that shift. They settle. Not because they're weak, but because they're afraid. Afraid of disappointing others. Afraid of failing. Afraid of being judged. But let me tell you something. The greatest tragedy in life is not failure. It's living a life that wasn't truly yours. Because failure at least means you tried. It means you pushed boundaries. It means you were alive. But living someone else's life, that's a slow, quiet kind of regret. The kind that doesn't hit you all at once, but creeps in over the years. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've built a life that looks good on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. And by then, changing it feels impossible. So don't wait for that moment. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait until everything makes sense. It never will. Instead, start small. Start by listening to that voice inside you, the one that whispers when everything else is quiet, the one that says, there's more than this. That voice is your compass. It won't always be logical. It won't always be practical. But it will always be true. And if you follow it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else, it will lead you somewhere extraordinary. Because the people who changed the world, the ones we remember, they didn't follow the script. They rewrote it. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. Not tomorrow, not someday, but right now, are you living your life or someone else's version of it? Because the moment you decide to take ownership, to break away, to think for yourself, to trust your own path, that's the moment your real life begins. Follow curiosity, not certainty. Let me tell you something most people won't admit. They are addicted to certainty. They want guarantees before they take a step. They want proof before they believe. They want the entire path laid out before they even begin. But life doesn't work that way. And if you wait for certainty, you will be waiting forever. The most powerful force you have is not logic. It's not planning. It's not even intelligence. It's curiosity. That quiet pull inside you, the thing that makes you lean in, explore, question, wonder, that's where everything meaningful begins. When I was younger, I had no idea how things would connect. I wasn't following a master plan. I was following what fascinated me. Calligraphy, design, simplicity, beauty, none of it seemed useful at the time. In fact, most people would say it was a waste of time. But I didn't care. Because curiosity doesn't need justification. It doesn't ask, will this make me money? It asks, does this make me feel alive? And that's the difference. When you follow certainty, you stay within the boundaries of what's already known. But when you follow curiosity, you step into the unknown. And the unknown is where innovation lives. The problem is, we're taught to ignore it. We're trained to believe that if something doesn't have a clear outcome, it's not worth pursuing. So we shut it down. We silence that inner voice. We choose what's practical over what's possible. But every breakthrough, every revolutionary idea, every beautiful creation came from someone who followed their curiosity, not their comfort. Here's the thing. Curiosity will lead you into places that don't make sense at first. It will take you off the safe path. It will confuse people around you. It will make you question yourself. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. Because it forces you to think differently. It forces you to see connections others don't. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. And that requires trust. Not blind faith, but a deep belief that what you're exploring now will matter later, even if you can't see how. Most people never experience that kind of trust. They need reassurance. They need validation. They need someone to tell them they're on the right path. But the truth is, there is no right path. There's only your path, and it's messy. It's unpredictable. It's full of detours that look like mistakes, but turn out to be the most important parts of the journey. The typography in the Macintosh didn't come from a business strategy. It came from curiosity. It came from exploring something beautiful, something unnecessary, something impractical. And yet it changed the way people interacted with technology forever. That's what curiosity does. It connects worlds that weren't meant to be connected. It brings art into engineering. It brings humanity into machines. It turns ordinary ideas into extraordinary experiences, but only if you follow it. And following it requires courage, because curiosity doesn't come with guarantees. It doesn't promise success. It doesn't promise recognition. It doesn't even promise that it will make sense. All it offers is possibility. And for most people, that's not enough. They'd rather have certainty leads to a life that feels predictable, repetitive, and empty. But if you're here, if you're listening to this, then maybe you're not like most people. Maybe there's something inside you, pushing you to explore, to question, to create. Don't ignore that. Don't. Rationalize it away. Don't trade it for a life that looks safe, but feels small. Follow it, even when it's inconvenient, even when it doesn't fit into your plan, even when no one else understands it. Because one day, you'll look back, and those random interests, those late nights, those strange choices, they'll form a pattern, a story, a path that only you could have created. And that's the beauty of it. So stop asking, what's the safest choice? Start asking, what am I curious about? Because in the end, certainty keeps you where you are. But curiosity is what takes you somewhere no one has ever been before. Embrace failure. Like it's fuel. Let's get something straight. Failure is not your enemy. It never was. The real enemy is your fear of it. Because fear is what keeps you small. Fear is what keeps you safe. And safe is the most dangerous place you can live. We've been taught to avoid failure at all costs. In school, failure is a bad grade. In society, failure is embarrassment. In life, Failure is something to hide. So what do? We play it safe. We lower our ambitions just enough to avoid falling. We choose paths where the outcome is predictable. We build lives that minimize risk and maximize comfort. And slowly, without realizing it, we trade growth for security. But here's the truth. If you're not failing, you're not growing. You're just repeating what you already know. And nothing extraordinary has ever come from that. I've failed publicly, painfully. I was pushed out of the company I created. Think about that for a moment. The thing I poured my heart into, the thing I built from nothing, was taken away from me. It was devastating. There's no way to dress that up. It felt like everything had collapsed. My identity, my purpose, my direction. For a while, I didn't know what came next. And that's the part people don't talk about. Failure isn't just an event. It's a period, a space where everything feels uncertain, where confidence disappears, where doubt gets louder than belief. But here's what I discovered in that space. Failure strips away everything that isn't real. It forces you to confront yourself, not the version the world sees, but the truth. What do you actually care about? What are you willing to rebuild? What still excites you, even after everything falls apart? And if you can answer those questions honestly, failure becomes something else entirely. It becomes clarity. Getting fired from Apple didn't destroy me. It freed me. It removed the weight of expectations. It gave me the space to create again, not for success, not for validation, but for the love of it. I started over, and starting over is powerful. Because when you begin again, you're no longer trying to protect something. You're exploring, you're experimenting, you're willing to take risks you would have never taken before. That's where real innovation happens. Not when you're comfortable, but when you have nothing left to lose. Most people never reach that point because they avoid failure so carefully that they also avoid possibility. They stay in jobs they don't love. They hold on to ideas they never act on. They silence their ambitions before they even have a chance to grow, all because they're afraid of what might go wrong. But what if you flipped that? What if you started seeing failure not as something to fear, but as something to use? Because every failure carries information. Every mistake teaches you something you couldn't have learned any other way. It sharpens your instincts. It refines your vision. It makes you stronger, more focused, more resilient. Success doesn't teach you much. It reinforces what you already did. But failure forces evolute. Ion, it demands that you adapt, that you improve, that you become better. And if you embrace it, really embrace it, it becomes fuel. Fuel for your next idea, fuel for your next attempt, fuel for becoming someone who doesn't break under pressure, but grows because of it. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't talent. It's not luck. It's their relationship with failure. Some people let it define them, others let it refine them. So the next time something doesn't work out, the next time you fall short, the next time things don't go according to plan, don't run from it. Lean into it. Ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? Because hidden inside that moment is the exact lesson you need to move forward. And remember this, failure is not the end of your story. It's the moment your story gets real. It's the turning point. The place where you stop playing it safe and start playing to win. So go ahead, take the risk, make the leap. Try the thing that scares you. Because even if you fail, you won't be starting over from scratch. You'll be starting over with experience, with insight, and with a fire that most people never have. And that changes everything. Build something that matters. At the end of your life, none of the small things will matter. Not the titles, not the meetings, not the approval you spent years chasing. All of it fades. What remains is what you built, what you created, What you gave to the world that didn't exist before you showed up. And that's the question you have to face. What are you building? Because whether you realize it or not, you are building something every single day. You're either building a life of intention or a life of reaction. You're either creating something meaningful or consuming what others have created. And there's a big difference between the two. Most people settle into consumption. They scroll, they watch, they follow. They become spectators in a world that rewards creators. But the people who change things, the people who leave a mark, they build. Not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because they feel a responsibility to do something that matters. When we created products at Apple, we didn't ask what will sell. We asked what should exist. That's a different question. It's not driven by the market, it's driven by vision, by a belief that the world can be better, simpler, more beautiful, more human. And when you operate from that place, you don't just build products, you build experiences, you build meaning. You build something that people connect with on a deeper level. But here's the reality. Building something that matters is hard. It demands your time. It demands your energy. It demands your attention completely. You don't stumble into meaningful work. You commit to it. You obsess over it. You refine it over and over again until it reflects what you truly believe. And that level of commitment scares people because it requires focus. It requires saying no to distractions, to shortcuts, to anything that pulls you away from your vision. But focus is what turns good into great. It's what separates average work from something that resonates. You can't build something meaningful if you're scattered. If your attention is divided, your impact will be diluted. So you have to decide what matters enough to you that you're willing to give it your full attention, because that's the starting point. Not money, not recognition, not external validation. Meaning, what do you care about deeply enough that you'd still do it even if no one was watching? That's where great work comes from. And when you find that, you don't just work, you create. And creation is powerful, because when you create something meaningful, you're not just changing your own life, you're affecting others. You're shaping how people think, how they feel, how they experience the world. A single idea, a single product, a single piece of work can ripple outward in ways you'll never fully understand. That's the impact you're capable of. But most people never reach it because they aim too low. They build things that are convenient, not meaningful. They follow trends instead of setting them. They prioritize speed over quality. And in doing so, they miss the opportunity to create something that lasts, something that matters. So raise your standards. Don't ask, is this good enough? Ask, is this something I'm proud of? Because pride in your work is what pushes you to go further, to refine, to improve, to elevate. And that's where excellence lives. It's not in doing more, it's in caring more, caring about the details, caring about the experience, caring about the impact your work has on others. That level of care is rare, and that's exactly why it stands out. So don't settle for building something that just works. Build something that means something, something that reflects who you are, something that solves a real problem, something that makes people stop and feel and think differently. Because in the end, your life is your canvas, and every day you're adding something to it. The question is, are you creating something ordinary or something unforgettable? Because the people who leave a legacy, they don't just live, they build. They create the world something it didn't know it was missing. And that is how you put a dent in the universe.